Foggy Bottom Line Media. Hello, everybody. This is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media. Welcome back to another episode of Two Crusty Old Combat Soldiers with a Microphone. I'm joined by my co-host, Scott Konopasek. Hey, Scott. Thanks for joining me. And today we're going to keep talking about Iran. The war in Iran is now about 10 days old. We're recording this on Wednesday morning, March 11th. So the war in Iran is now about 10 days old, and the scope of this thing has expanded radically. We're way beyond what happened, a couple months ago when Trump and Israel bombed the what they said were their nuclear facilities. That lasted a day or two. This has gone on now for 10 days. And even the Trump administration is suggesting that this could be weeks before this thing's over. So we're going to dive into this. Scott's going to bring his intelligence officer expertise into this to start talking about some of his experience in the area. And we'll talk about both the U.S. options here, what we can do, and what we think the Iranians could do and are already doing in some sense. Before we jump in, though, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the little bell so you get notifications. Keep an eye out for us on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. The footprint's growing. If you subscribe, you'll be sure to get access to all the content and a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So, Scott, 10 days into this thing, we've bombed Tehran, including an elementary school in the southern part of Iran. It looks like that was a U.S. missile that hit. And you might know something about this, but I understand that was because they were using old intelligence when they mapped out their targets, which makes all the sense in the world. Apparently, maybe some building was repurposed as a school, and we didn't know that. We did decapitate the regime. Ayatollah Khamenei was killed in the initial attacks, but the Iranians have basically placed his son, Ayatollah Khamenei 2.0, I guess, in that seat, which indicates that they aren't planning to hang it up anytime soon. That's a signal to me, at least, that they want to continue the fight. So what do you think? What are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, as you said, we're about 10-ish days into the conflict. And I think that's 8 or more days longer than what was initially planned.
Right.
I think the administration thought they were going to throw a haymaker and a knockout punch on the first day when they wiped out the Ayatollah and the key leadership. But the Iranians proved to be much more resilient in their leadership and political structure than what we gave them credit for, which is why here we are almost 2 weeks into the operation with no end in sight. And I think that other than the initial belief that we're going to trigger regime change with the assassination of the Ayatollah, I don't think the administration had given much thought to what other objectives might be. And I think that's why we're getting all this squirrely, contradictory explanations for what our objectives are. And I think in talking about the regime staying intact after that devastating attack, I was really impressed that within 12 hours of that initial attack, rather than the country collapsing into chaos or paralysis, someone was commanding the military and coordinating missile strikes and drone attacks in the region, to include other Gulf countries, American assets in other Gulf countries, and as well as attacking Israel. That shows a real resilience in terms of and depth of leadership in their military and political structure, that they were able to immediately rebound and start reestablishing command and control and a concerted effort to respond to the attack. And I think another sign of unexpected resilience of the Iranian regime was just 2 days ago, they appointed a new supreme leader.
Right.
The clerics held on to power. The Revolutionary Guards are still in power, and so much in power that they're able to, continue the regime moving forward, reestablish a hierarchy, and backfill vacancies that have been created by the attack. So,
Right.
I think that's pretty damn impressive.
Well, folks, I think Scott and I, when we talked in pre-production, we talked about what we want to do here is sort of lay out what we think the U.S. objectives and capabilities are, and then sort of flip that over and take a look at what the Iranian objectives and capabilities might be, and try to scope out what kind of, maybe even get to some kind of guesses about end state. But I think we would characterize the U.S. objectives. You just talked about regime change, and that's certainly one of them, right?
Right.
Because in the recent weeks, you have seen some protests in Iran against the clerical regime. Those were put down very violently. I understand as many as 20,000 protesters may have been killed during that response, and there may have been some hope on our side that this would trigger an uprising that would topple the clerical regime. That apparently has not happened yet, and I don't see any evidence that it's about to. Another sort of objective the U.S. and Israel would be to destroy Iran's capability to reach out and touch others. And by that, I mean both their nuclear options, to the extent they have any, but also just their ballistic missile systems and drone systems and their capabilities there, not just to the ones they already have, but their ability to make more would be an objective, to destroy that industrial capability. And then finally, the third, and I've read this in a couple places, that one objective might be to, generally speaking, remove Iran as a player, as a geopolitical player in the region with capabilities, the ability to defend itself, the ability to reach out and attack other states. And I have to question, historically, especially speaking, the ability of our ability to do that with air power alone, right? Historically speaking, air power did not destroy the German industrial capability of World War II. Air power did not stop the North Vietnam from taking over South Vietnam in the end, even though Nixon and Kissinger dropped what 3 or 4 times as many bombs on Vietnam as we dropped on Germany in World War II, and Germany and Japan together, in fact. Mm-hmm. So those objectives, they seem like plausible ones, even though the Trump administration said nothing about what the objectives might be. And to truly accomplish these things, you might have to put soldiers on the ground, and actually a ground invasion. And we'll get to that in a minute. But Scott, you were talking before we started recording about what you see as the 3 main Iranian objectives. And could you sort of lay that out for us real quick?
Sure. As an intel guy who had to brief generals about what the bad guy was going to do, what he was likely to do, what his options were, it was kind of just a familiar pattern of thinking for me to start breaking it down this way. And I came up with 3 courses of action that I think the Iranians have already demonstrated that they're committed to, and these courses of actions reflect their objectives. We talked a little bit about the resilience of the regime, and I think maintaining the regime is the top priority for the Iranians at this point in time. And so far, they've done a good job. And it looks like the absent some groundswell of popular revolt in the streets, which we don't see any indications of, I think their biggest challenge is going, in terms of maintaining the regime, is going to be keeping the new supreme leader alive, mm-hmm. and keep them safe from U.S. and Israeli bombs. But I think that clearly just continued existence of the regime, not the country, but the regime,
Right. Right.
is the key objective. And I think the second course of action and objective is to prolong the conflict as long as possible. Uh, the U.S. showed up thinking it's going to be quick. Everything that Trump has done so far has been very quick. The last attacks on Iran over the years have been get in, get out, and it's over quickly. And I think part of prolonging the conflict is also, I think a term you used is horizontal escalation. A broadening.
Right.
Broadening the conflict, expanding the scope of countries that are involved. So I think it plays into Iran's goals to just survive long enough to keep this thing going on, because Americans are notoriously impatient. Trump has shown himself to be impatient and impetuous, and trigger some rash act, or get the other countries, the Gulf countries, and other countries in the region that are being affected by this, to get them to get involved and create more political and diplomatic issues for the United States to deal with. And the third objective, and these things are not linear; they're going on concurrently with each
Right.
other.
It's a holistic sort of strategy.
Right. Yeah, I think the third very obvious strategy on the part of the Iranians, and it should be no surprise, is to bring as much pain and humiliation to the United States and to Trump personally as possible. Think back to the embassy hostage crisis back in 1979, 1980. The biggest purpose of that was to humiliate Jimmy Carter in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and to show our impotence in affecting what was going on in what previously was basically a vassal state of the United
Right.
States. So I think that pain and humiliation of the United States is very high on their objectives. And candidly, over the weekend, I think is the Iranian president, who's not really a powerful political leader, but kind of a spokesman, told Trump that he better hope that he's not part of some kind of regime change initiated by the Iranians. So I think
Right.
that's part of their calculus as well. So those three things:
Well,
maintain the regime, prolong the conflict, and embarrass and hurt the United States and Trump as much as possible.
and honestly, since Trump has now done it twice, basically used military force to kill a foreign leader, you sort of, we talk a lot about norms and understandings, especially in geopolitics, as IR theorists, as international relations theorists. One of the reasons the world system works, even in times of conflict, is that there are certain shared understandings about what it's okay to do and what it's not okay to do, and
Right.
and directly targeting the enemy's president or prime minister or king or whatever, uh, has been off the table historically, and Trump has put that on the table. So we couldn't really stand up and say, "Wait a minute, you shouldn't be doing that." Now that we're doing it ourselves, but I want to circle back, because what you said about horizontal escalation, I think, matters here, because it seems to me that, and I want to get your input on this, because the horizontal escalation, folks, what this basically means is broadening the scope of the conflict by bringing in other players and making other players, other countries in this case, feel some pain in hopes of getting them to put pressure on Israel, put pressure on the U.S. to to pull back, to stop the fighting, to stop the bombing, right? So these small Gulf states, we're talking about Dubai, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. These Gulf states that ring the Persian Gulf. They're all petrostates. They're all super wealthy, big class society, right? But there's a lot of concentrated wealth there, mostly from the petrodollars. So you've got teenagers driving around in Lamborghinis, right? If you look on social media, you can see these 18 and 19-year-old kids in Lamborghinis going to nightclubs, right? And these are the sons and the daughters of the sheiks and such, I would guess, right? And there's an underclass there. The regular workers, a lot of them foreign workers, don't have a lot of money, but that wealth is there because of the petrodollars. But there's another thing that we're not thinking about that is going to be critical here. And, I've said many times that if you think people are fighting over oil, wait till they start fighting over water. And this is usually in the context of climate change. But it's important to remember that these countries, these cities, they get 90% of their water, 70 to 90% of their water, depending on the country, from desalination plants. So guess what happens when an Iranian missile hits a desalination plant in Dubai or Saudi Arabia? Right. Now people are thirsty. And folks, it doesn't take much to do that. I had a conversation with someone about the possibilities of Iran actually destroying an American aircraft carrier, right? Using a $1 million missile to destroy a $5 billion aircraft carrier. Not to mention it's $1 million planes that are on it. That is probably not going to happen. Be very difficult to do for a lot of reasons we won't go into right now. But these desalination plants don't have the same kind of protection an aircraft carrier does. They're stationary. Right. Everybody knows where they are. And you wouldn't even need a missile. You could sabotage would do it. So, there's a lot of things they can attack that would not only bring other players in, but greatly expand the scope of the war and the pain. And we haven't even started talking about the stock market and the world economy once oil gets up to $100 a barrel and stays there. What do you think, Scott? Am I going down the right road there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is clearly the Iranians' goal and course of action to prolong the conflict, to expand it. The size of the cities and the Gulf countries right now is only because of desalination. There's no water. They wouldn't exist without desalination. There is no other source of water. So if they were to be crippled and the water immediately shut off from them, 72 hours and they would start withering on the vine. The Iranians know that. But also, it occurred to me as you're talking about this horizontal escalation that two surprising players have also kind of been starting to be roped into the conflict. One is Russia, who depends on Iran for all the drones, and there are allegations and plenty of evidence that the Russians have been giving intelligence to the Iranians as to troop movements and location of U.S. assets and that. And then, ironically, now keep in mind, Trump was elected saying he's going to solve the Ukrainian war in one day, on day one. And he's been dorking around since he's been back in office and done anything. So now Russia is one part of that conflict. Now the other part of the conflict, Zelensky and the Ukrainians said, "Hey man, we know how to beat these drones. We've been fighting them for years. These exact drones. Hey, you want us to come? You want us to come help you? Do you want us to come get involved? Do you want some of our technology and our know-how?" So now the Ukrainian-Russian war is sort of being absorbed into this this conflict as well, which has really got to piss and embarrass Trump by having Zelensky offering to help the United States with Ukrainian arms.
And folks, if you doubt the capability of these Iranian drones, this shot egg drone, I think that's how you say it.
Yeah.
If you doubt the capability of these things, remember that the latest U.S. drone is a modified version of the same thing. So that design and capability is so good, we copied it. We didn't make our own version. We copied the one they made. It's cheap. I think they call it low unit cost ammunition or
Yeah,
something like that, Luca,
ammunition.
something like
Yeah,
that, because they cost $30,000 a piece. But use a $30,000 drone to destroy a multi-million-dollar desalination plant that can't be rebuilt in a couple of days, and basically makes life possible. See, this has historically been a very low population part of the world because of water. And if you
right.
create the conditions where you can turn seawater into potable water, you can have a big city like Dubai that's beautiful and technologically advanced and gorgeous. And I think the tallest skyscraper in the world is there now. And
Right.
they're literally geoengineering new land by making land in the Gulf, making new land in the Gulf. But all that goes away without these desalination plants. So we talk about what are the prospects for? I mean, how long can the Iranians keep going? Do you think? Any thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
well, that's a good question. So, without a doubt, the Israelis and the U.S. are going after the missile launchers, munition storage areas. I guess overnight we went after any small boats that could deliver landmines to the or water mines to the
Right.
Straits
To
of
the straight.
Hormuz. Uh, but I think we've underestimated already how many missiles uh, that the Iranians have because they keep shooting them. Maybe not as many in a day, but they obviously haven't run out yet, and they still have launchers. And I've heard reports that the Iranians still have more than half of their drone supply available to them, and those are hidden away uh, in places. They don't need launchers. They're hard to detect remotely. I think that, and they've been manufacturing these things in large number for the last few years
Because they
to
knew they were going to need them, or they possibly could need them.
right,
Right.
and because
Right.
Russia was paying good money for them as well. Uh,
Right. Right.
so I, I think we may have really underestimated
Right.
how long their munitions uh, are going to last.
And
So I think they have the capability of prolonging and expanding this conflict almost indefinitely. Uh,
mhm.
Certainly
and
longer than what we have the ability to resupply ourselves with these multi-million dollar per bullet weapon systems.
oh yeah, and I was just going to say, and it's not like the U.S. and Israel have an infinite number of these weapon systems, right? We eventually would run out ourselves, and we used to talk a lot about our national military strategy requiring the capability of fighting two regional wars at the same time. Well, we're in one now. And if another one were to break out, in fact, if China's ever going to go after Taiwan, now would be the time, right? But the it's not. Uh, we don't have an infinite number of these systems ourselves, and folks, they're not as easy to make as you think. When we were chunking out 10,000 fighter planes a month in World War II, those are very simple machines. The ones we make now cost quite a bit more, and they're not easy to make. They're very complicated machines. A lot of it's software driven, and the materials aren't as abundant as just plain aluminum or steel.
Right.
So, while we're talking money, real quick, let's make sure we emphasize this. So far, the best estimates are that this war is costing the United States government something like $900 million a day. I'm going to say that again. This war is costing the United States government something like $900 million, very close to $1 billion every day. Okay? Now, how long is that sustainable? And, eventually Congress will have to appropriate more money. But even if Congress rolls over and plays dead and says, sure, here, have the Treasury, take all you want. You can keep doing this as long as you want to. How long can we spend $1 billion every day on a war that probably wasn't strictly speaking necessary? Sure, Iran is a bad actor. They have supported terrorist organizations in Israel and in the Strait of Hormuz, the Houthis. They supported Hezbollah. They supported Hamas. They are a terrorist supporting country. That's a true statement. We won't go into some of the reasons why they might think they're justified in that, maybe in another podcast, but they have been doing that. It is a country that we'd rather didn't have nuclear weapons. Okay. But was it necessary to do this action at this time, and so necessary that we're willing to spend $1 billion a day on it when we already have huge budget deficits, shortfalls, and a national debt we can barely pay for and show no signs of paying down? So
Right.
How long can we put up with this expense, do you think?
Well, the U.S. federal government has the ability to turn on the printing presses and print money and borrow money, and the country itself is in a better position to deal with this rapidly accumulating debt than what the individual citizens are. Which,
right,
we don't have our own money presses, and we don't have an unlimited ability to borrow money. Let's just talk about the increased cost of fuel to Americans.
right,
Everyone lost their mind in 2022 after the Russians invaded Ukraine, and we put sanctions on Russian oil and energy. And over a period of 6 months, the increased cost, or the cost of gasoline, increased nearly $1 a gallon, and
right.
people lost their minds. In this last week, in 6 days, and back in 2022, is circumstances beyond our own control. But
right,
under circumstances that we control, in 6 days, we've already hit that nearly $1 increase in the cost of a gallon of fuel and gasoline.
right.
Which means that Americans, this is like a fuel tax, because people have to buy gas. Businesses need fuel to deliver their products, and all that. And I heard a number, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but in the last week, Americans have paid $200 million more for fuel than what they did the week before. Now, that takes a chunk out of people's budget. And like I said, individual Americans can't just print their own money. We can run up our credit cards for a while,
Right.
but that comes back to get us too. So and the stock market is up and down in the price of oil, and Trump's statements appear at times to be intentionally manipulating markets to
Yeah.
minimize
This will be over soon, and the stock market kicks back up.
Right.
So,
And
right.
then after the market closes that night, he goes, "No, really, it's going to go a little bit longer."
And folks,
when nobody.
You don't have to take our word for it. But if you voted for Donald Trump because your 401k was doing well, because the stock market was kicking up over 50,000, well, it's down around 47 now, and it's dropping today. And that's because investors are concerned about two things. One is oil, and the other is AI, the potential AI bubble. But this oil thing matters not just for the cost of gasoline at the pump, because oil is used to make virtually everything. Petroleum is even used in fertilizer. So the cost of food goes up when the cost of oil goes up. Air travel gasoline for your car, plastic. The Coca-Cola would be more expensive because the plastic bottle it goes in will cost more if oil is more expensive.
Right.
And
And we don't eat farm to table. We go farm truck to table. And
yeah, right,
all the food being grown in California and Arizona, it's not going to make it to Virginia if we don't have fuel in those trucks. Uh,
right. And that last time we had a disruption in oil like this in the 70s, and Scott, you and I are both old enough to remember this, unfortunately,
yeah.
is what they called stagflation. And I did a short one when I first started doing this Foggy Bottom Line Media thing. I did a short one on stagflation. Stagflation is what you get when inflation is up because oil prices are going up, and that jacks up the cost of everything. But the economy is slowing down, and unemployment also goes up at the same time because people aren't hiring. And it's a very difficult economic problem. And this fits into your third sort of objective for the Iranians is to humiliate Trump. I mean, if they can generate $5 a gallon gasoline in the U.S., that places a lot of pressure on Trump to put an end to this thing, right?
Right. Right. So we got a terrible job report last Friday. We lost
Mm-hmm.
144,000 jobs. And unemployment went up to 4.4% from 4.3. So we're already seeing that. And I don't think we're going to see any more reductions in the interest rate by the Federal Reserve, uh,
No.
regardless how loudly Trump beats the table with his shoe
Yeah.
for it. I think that's off the table now. And I think all of the progress that has been made the last 2-3 years to overcome that short burst of very high and quick inflation uh,
Mm-hmm.
is 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 being undone. It's being unrolled.
Right.
Uh,
Right. So what can we expect? I mean, what do you think an end state looks like? I'm having trouble processing that because I don't see the Iranians just rolling over and playing dead. Um, I mean, what kind of I mean, Iranian objectives for coming out of this would be, like you said, keep the regime in place, maybe put an end to sanctions if possible, um, try to find a way to become part of the regular world. But the it's hard for me to understand how that could happen after this because if I'm them, I'm going to keep building missiles and drones and whatever I might need should this happen again. What do you think the end state for the U.S. and Israel looks like? I talked about it a little bit, right?
uh,
You know, uh, Ending the regime change, removing Iran as a geopolitical player with respect to supporting terrorist regimes, perhaps. Um, but how do we get there without actually sending troops in? Can that be done, or is air power not up to the task?
well, I think escalation in any form by the part of the on the part of the United States and Israel is a serious mistake. I think we will never win by continuing to escalate, regardless of the rhetoric of our Secretary of Defense uh, talking about that. I think that admitting that we've gone far enough and maybe it's step too far and backing off and trying to find some state where we can uh, mutually uh, survive, not necessarily embrace each other, kind of like we did during the Cold War. We had
Mm-hmm.
the mutually assured destruction that kind of made us just kind of live and let live. And I
Right.
think if we could uh, restore kind of a live and let live relationship in the region between the United States and Iran, the Gulf states and Iran, and Israel and Iran, that we have a prospect of a, a not a horrific ending,
Right.
but admitting admitting any kind of weakness and or backing down from bullying, threats, and posturing is not in the DNA of either Trump or Netanyahu.
Right.
So I don't see that happening without some regime change uh, in Israel and the United States. So I think we're going to keep doubling, tripling down on escalation. which is only going to make things worse.
Right.
Particularly since sort of the standard of success right now, it hasn't been refuted yet or completely withdrawn by Trump, is complete and utter surrender unconditionally by the part of the Iranians. And I don't think we're ever going to get them there. So
That to me, that's kind of silly on its face, Scott. I mean, seriously. When the Germans surrendered, we had a bunch of troops there, and we were able to occupy it with the help of the British and the French and the Russians, the Soviets. But what does Iranian surrender even look like? I mean, in some sense, they really surrendered years ago when they agreed to that JPCOA, the treaty to end
right,
their nuclear program that Obama and Biden negotiated, and they basically gave us everything we asked for. They said at the time, we don't want to be the pariah state, right? We just want to sort of be left alone here. And folks, what happens when countries like Iran, Vietnam's another good example, Iraq was an example, the Taliban in Afghanistan, when these states have to fight a major power, they have to do it asymmetrically. And so far, Iran has used pretty conventional weapon systems, ballistic missiles, drones, right? Aircraft to some very limited extent. But there comes a point where the only way they can fight is basically by terrorism. And they have to, did you hear the report about some secret code on shortwave radio? And people are scrambling to figure out if it's the Iranians awakening the sleeper cells. And that sounds kind of crazy, but it might have sounded kind of crazy in 1999 to think that a couple of guys would fly planes into a skyscraper in New York City. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
That's how the Vietnamese beat us.
Right. We know that the Iranians have groomed proxies over the last 5 decades.
Mm-hmm.
We have Hezbollah, we have the Hutus, or the I get it mixed up with the one, Houthis, and Hamas, and Kurds, or not Kurds, but other militias in Iraq, and support to ISIS.
Lebanon.
Yeah, in Lebanon. So we haven't seen the Iranians effectively bring all these proxies to bear on the challenge right now.
That's a true statement. Yeah.
And I'm worried when we do. You joked about sleeper agents. I think they exist. I think they're here in the United States. And I think that there are lone wolves and self-radicalized folks. We've already started to see a couple of incidents of that.
When they're shooting in Texas, something. Yeah.
Right. And the bomb throwing up in New York City this last weekend. So you talked about terrorism being a future strategy. No, I think it's an imminent strategy. It's an ongoing strategy. And it really concerns me that we haven't seen more out of these proxies yet, acting out on in the interests of Iran. So that's something. If I were a political military leader in the U.S. right now, or if I was back in the intel business advising, I would be on the lookout for the indicators that those proxies are being activated and motivated and directed to hit soft targets, and not the aircraft carrier, and maybe not even the desalination plant, but football games, March Madness games.
Right.
I think we're in a pretty dangerous place right now, and hopefully somebody's keeping tabs on these Iranian proxies. But we keep hearing that the FBI fired all their Iranian counterterrorist people. So Yeah, maybe we're not. Maybe or leaving open the door, and maybe achieving that third objective of embarrassing the hell out of us and hurting us is more within their power than what we may want to believe.
Right. Well, this whole thing demonstrates to me an incredible tactical competence on the part of the U.S. military. I mean, our
Incompetence,
ability, no competence, tactical competence. The folks that
strategic
are pushing these
incompetence.
buttons they're getting done what they want to get done, right?
Right.
And I think we overestimate our ability to do all the things we want to do using that, but what they've tried to do, they've managed to execute very well. The incompetence is in the strategy, because it certainly appears that the Trump administration, and we all know Hegseth has no kind of clue what the hell it is he's trying to do. None of any kind. And strategically, they just didn't see a lot of this coming. They did not see Iran shooting ballistic missiles at a military base in Oman. They did not see that coming. Any intelligence officer, any kind of military leader worth his salt or her salt would have predicted that, right? You would have,
Right.
back in your day. I would have. I don't understand how they could have missed all this, and I think it's honestly because we are led, folks. The United States government is being run right now by a bunch of people. Trump and Hegseth are just the people right up front on the news all the time, but it's being run by a bunch of people who have no idea what they're trying to do, and they think anything they do will work automatically because they're the ones doing it. And this has worked for Trump his whole life. Everything he's done, whether it's morally questionable, whether it's legally questionable, whether it's right or wrong, everything he's done has worked out for him so far. And so he thinks, well, I can just push this button and nothing but good things will happen. And he doesn't understand that there are ways we can lose this. And no, Iran's not going to take over the United States. And no, we're not going to lose a military battle. But we won every battle in Vietnam and still lost that war because we didn't have the strategic vision to understand what had to be done to win it. And these folks don't have that strategic vision in my mind.
Right. So, one of the things that keeps coming back to me is we're trying to apply these principles of rationality and self-interest and national interest and bounded rationality to all these decisions that are being made. And maybe there's more at play than that. Maybe there's a theological aspect of this. You asked me earlier if I thought religion, Islam, had anything to do with what the Iranians were doing. And I don't really directly think so, but I think the clerical power, the fusion of clerical power and political power together, maybe. But I think that in the United States, we do have this nationalist Christian philosophy that's at play that is motivating and informing some of the decisions that are being made. That the outcome doesn't have to be in our national. This is hypothetical. Right. I'm speculating here, but the outcome of this doesn't have to be in our national interest. It doesn't have to be rational. All it has to do is usher in the last days, and mission accomplished.
Yeah,
and that's the criteria that Hegseth is using when he says no more rules of engagement, no more politically correct things. Everything's on the table. We're going to do whatever. We don't care. We're just going to keep coming back with more and more and more. That's not rational, and it serves no stated interest. So what is the motivation? So part of me is afraid that there really is this underpinning of both, maybe even on the part of Israelis and the Jews, that this is going to provoke the last days, end of days, and that's the goal, not $2 a gallon gasoline anymore.
there's all kinds of ways you could rationalize this depending on your worldview. One is the one you just mentioned. I mean, if you're a Christian nationalist who believes there has to be a big Middle East war to bring back the end days, then that would be one. I mean, that's pretty rational if you actually believe that's going to happen and that's what you're trying to achieve, right? There's nothing irrational about that except the believing it in the first place. There's some rationality with respect to are we doing what Trump's sort of paymasters want done, whether that's Israel or Saudi Arabia or whoever it is. Is Trump making money on this, I guess, is the question.
Right.
And I mean, until Trump, you never would have even thought to ask it. But, but with Trump, you don't know. It may be that there's some way he's making a lot of money on this. And we already talked about last week we talked about the betting, on
Right.
on
So
on
the
these
question
prediction
isn't
websites.
is Trump or could Trump make money? The question is, how is he making money off of this?
Right.
Because that guy doesn't let one opportunity go by.
He's very transactional, but I think we're coming up over 45 minutes, so we'll start winding up here. More next week, I'm sure, on this because there's a lot to talk about here and a lot of aspects to this. Talking about the rationality piece, I think that's ultimately what brings this to a conclusion, is that the political cost to Trump is only going to go up. He's already seeing his base fractured because the America First wing of the MAGA factions, they do not see this as America First. And Trump has not tried to explain to them why it is America First, which is interesting to me, politically speaking. But the pain point here is going to be the world economy. And folks, I want you all to think about one of the takeaways from this episode I'd like you to think about is the enormous cost of modern war, right? We talked about $1 billion a day that we're spending on missiles and fuel and food for the troops and all those kinds of things. And we talk about the cost of war. We can talk about lives. We can talk about 125 elementary school kids in Iraq or Iran. We can talk about the 6 American military service members who have already lost their lives, and 140 something, you said, Scott, have been wounded, some seriously. That's a cost. But this is going to be it already is, really disruptive of the entire world economy. Okay. And this just spiking the price of oil is a huge cost that's going to make everything more expensive. The stock market's already been tanking, and it's dropping slowly. It's not one big 20% drop. It's dropping slowly, but it's lost something like 5% of its value since this started, right? And like you said, Trump's rhetoric tends to make it go like this, but the huge cost here, but the sheer destructiveness of this. Watch some of the video. It's hard to watch some of it, but you see apartment buildings destroyed. You see skyscrapers on fire. You see airports shut down, desalination plants, petroleum facilities. All this stuff is on fire. Tehran, they had burning oil going down into the sewer after an oil storage plant was hit. And folks, this is why we don't go to war, is because it's super destructive. And this is what makes it something to be avoided at all costs. And so at the end of the day, when you do something like this, when you're going to spend all this money and kill all these people, most of them innocent, you have to ask yourself, why was it worth it? And was it absolutely necessary? I argue that this was completely unnecessary, a waste of time and resources, a waste of lives. And I haven't heard anything from the Trump administration to justify this or to suggest that I'm wrong about that. So, Scott, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just one last thing. I think one of the victims of this is the the death of the post World War II world order
Hmm.
that was based upon liberal win-win philosophies, rationality, communication. Whether it's the United Nations or aid agencies or the
Hmm.
Security Council and the United Nations ratifying or or not efforts for to go to war. Uh, I That whole structure that was intended to bring order and rationality to our world system and bring peace and prosperity to everyone is being replaced, not slowly, pretty quickly, by utter chaos
Right.
and anarchy, international anarchy, which is Trump's calling card. Uh,
Uh-huh.
is
Chaos and
in,
anarchy. Yep.
introducing, injecting chaos and uncertainty into everything. So uh, the whole world and the whole world order and the next generations are going to be adversely impacted by this whole misadventure, regardless how it resolves, regardless
Right.
how long, because the institutions that our forefathers, the greatest generation, put together to make sure that horrors like World War II never happen again have been systematically dismantled.
Right.
Uh,
And,
so that's my last
and
take on this. So much for being optimistic and upbeat, right?
well, and just to tag on that a little bit, those of you out there, if you're watching and you're super conservative and you're worried about Project 2021 and the New World Order and the United Nations sending the black helicopters, blah blah blah. Um, you know what what you might get instead may not be better. And not all of that was just conspiracy theory in the first place. But we did an episode about this, in fact, about sort of the post World War II regime that the U.S. constructed in an effort to protect democracy and capitalism uh, in the time after the U.S. was no longer the hegemon, which we were in 1946. We're not anymore. What we're doing now is spending a lot of national treasure and ending a lot of lives for a project that probably was completely unnecessary. And it's scary to think about, but this is the world we live in now, and these norms and understandings that we shared for what 80 years, well 60 years, that have now been broken by Donald Trump because he's transactional and he wants to do anything he can to make money. God knows how he's making money on this, but I think you're right, Scott. He's not doing anything unless he sees a dollar sign. So we'll more to come on this, folks. We'll continue to talk about this and cover this. This is where our expertise lies. These military sort of military operations, the geopolitical interplay, the international relations, and the way these things work. It looks like we're moving away from an institutionalized world order where the U.S. was a big player to something a little more like Mearsheimer's and Waltz's anarchy, where nobody does anything. We're not the world's policemen, and people just fight all the time, um, and that's not a good thing. So stay tuned. More to come next week. More to come in the meantime. This is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media. Appreciate you joining us one more time for two crusty old combat soldiers with a microphone. Don't forget to subscribe. Take a look at us on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and those kinds of things. And look at the YouTube channel. Look at some of our older videos. We did one on the New World Order. We did one last week on this war and some other stuff. And we're going to keep on going. So, Scott, appreciate you joining me, sir. Thanks so much again. And as
My pleasure.
always, carry on. And
Carry on.
we will be back next week. Folks, this is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media, and we are out here.